begin with breaking news, and Turkey's Air Force has shot down a Russian fighter jet near its southern border with Syria. The plane fell from the skies above the Turkmen Mountains in Latakia province in the north of Syria. Now, these are pictures of the jet coming down in a ball of fire. It crashed in an area where rebels have been battling Syrian government forces that are backed by Russian airstrikes. Now, Russian forces are carrying out an operation to rescue their pilots. For more, let's get straight to John Brain in Gaziantep in southern Turkey near the border with Syria. John, Turkey has warned Russia numerous times to stay clear of Turkish airspace in this conflict. So why would Russian warplanes be operating in that area so close to the Turkish border?
Well, Andrea, they've been operating there because at the moment they're giving cover to Syrian regime forces who are engaged in a major onslaught against rebels there. That's why so many ethnic Turkmen have been fleeing in recent days. So that's the reason why the Russians are there. But that video you've been showing, that's being replayed across the world as we speak, because this is developing into a major military and diplomatic incident. Turkish F-16s were on patrol. They say they gave 10 separate warnings within the space of 5 minutes to that plane that it was violating Turkish airspace. The Russians deny that it was there. They say they've got proof that it was always in Syrian territory and point out that that's where it came down. Russia is already calling on the UN Security Council to investigate. Now, we understand that Russian helicopters are searching for the pilots. Part of the footage shows 2 parachutes come down, presumably the crew managing to escape after their plane was shot down. Unconfirmed reports say one of the pilots has already been found by the ethnic Turkmen. So this is a developing situation, one that is going to have severe international implications.
And John, now near where you are, and as you mentioned, hundreds of ethnic Turkmen are crossing the border into Turkey, trying to escape those Russian and Syrian airstrikes. What are you hearing about their flight now from Syria?
Well, they're saying the situation is getting worse and worse. They believe they're being targeted as civilians rather than just being caught up in the crossfire. In fact, Turkey has called on the UN Security Council to intervene. It's written a letter claiming that the Russian airstrikes are just a pretext, that they're saying there's no terrorists there, there's no Daesh, there's no al-Nusra, there's no al-Qaeda. They want the UN to intervene. And of course, the allegation likely to be made from the Russians is that Turkey has crossed the border in terms of firing on its plane to intervene in that situation. It's a mess there, really. We'll have to see how it develops over the coming hours.
Okay, John, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us from Gaziantep. Now, Julia Lyubova joins me now from Moscow. Julia, tell us more about what Moscow's saying about this warplane being shot down by Turkish forces.
Well, the Russian Defense Ministry has confirmed that its Su-24 jet was shot down, but Russia insists that it never violated Turkish airspace and insists that the plane was in Syria's airspace. In fact, it released a statement on its website earlier which reads, "On the territory of Syria, presumably as a result of fire from the ground, a Russian Su-24 plane crashed in Syria." And the plane was at an altitude of 6,000 meters. And also, Russia 24, Russian state television, is showing footage of this plane crash and saying that it was Russian pilots and that they ejected and they parachuted to the ground, but it's not quite clear where they are now. So Russia insists that the plane never violated Turkish airspace, and Moscow is now calling for an emergency UN Security Council meeting.
Okay, Julia, Turkey has warned Russia, as we said, several times in the past about flying close to Turkish airspace. Does Moscow take that into account?
Well, that's right. It's certainly not the first incident of such nature. And in fact, at the start of Russia's airstrikes campaign in Syria in early October, there has been 2 incidents that we know of when Russian jets violated Turkish airspace. And on one of the occasions, Russia said that it was due to bad weather. Well, certainly Moscow apologized for those incidents and tried to play it down. But it's difficult to see how both Moscow and Ankara will, how it be possible to play down this incident now. So it's a developing situation. We'll have to see what both Moscow and Ankara do next.
Okay, Julia, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us live from Moscow. Well, joining me now here in the studio is TRT World's managing editor, Rasul Sardar Atas. Rasul, thanks so much for coming in. I have to ask you personally, you're not overly concerned about what looks to be a serious escalation in the conflict between Russia and Turkey specifically. Why is that?
Well, first, Russia and Turkey are the rational states and the big power of the region. So this is definitely not going to lead a greater war, because in case of a greater war, there will be no winner but all losers. And besides that, it's closely related to the international community as well. Let's not forget about the US rule in the Middle East still. It's still the biggest power, and they will never allow that. On the other hand, the very delicate relationship between Turkey and Russia also do not allow this to lead to a greater war, because, as I said, politically, especially in Syria, they are rivals, but on the other hand, they are the biggest trade partners that depend to each other. So politically competition, but economically cooperation between these two countries.
Fair enough. So if you don't see this developing into something of a war, how do they reconcile these huge differences in the Syria conflict?
So that's a good question, but I will get there. But before that, I think that's important. Let's just mark that as well. So I think Turkey, by shutting down that Russian aircraft, Turkey spoke by a language that Russia understands. So why? So the first Russian bombardment in Syria started on September 2nd. So since that time on, Russians and Syrian aircrafts has violated Turkish airspace 5 times. And Turkey, the Russian policy can be described as test and go, test and go. So Russia tested 5 times, and Turkey decided that this is time of a clear message to this Russian policy. So they told in a language that Russia understands. Look, just that Turkey showed that there's no tolerance against its airspace violation. So for the last 10 days in the Turkmen Mountains region, there has been tens of Turkmen refugees fleeing to Turkey, and hundreds of civilians being killed by the Russian aircrafts. Russia, when it started the bombardment in Syria, it announced that it is going to this campaign is about ISIS. But when you look at that, the 2/3 of Russian bombardments, attacks, has targeted the legitimate opposition in Syria that is recognized by the international community as well. So in this sense, if you look at the Turkmen Mountain region, there is no ISIS there. Not even a single ISIS militants there. So it targeted Turkmens a lot, and it's like to create a space for the regime maybe to shadow over Idlib and Aleppo. So I think, and beside that, Turkey summoned the Russian ambassador in Ankara and warned Russia, gave nota, but Russians did not stop, and Turkey wanted to give a clear message that it is serious about this issue.
Turkey gave that message. Russia doesn't seem to be hearing it. They are clearly still operating in that region in defense of Bashar al-Assad.
Yeah.
Let me move on to the next issue then. Does Turkey want to hand off resolving that conflict then to the UN? Is that the next step they can take?
Yeah, definitely. Russia and Turkey, they are going to play hard in the UN. But on the other hand, let's just keep in mind that Turkey is the second largest army of NATO and is going to lean on NATO as well. On the other hand, Turkey's army has a high capability actually in terms of defense of the country as well. But as I said, both of them politically are going to play hard on the United Nations and in NATO as well.
Okay, so that will be the next forum for this conflict between Russia and Turkey. Rasul, thanks so much for that.